All right, Doc here for the Detroit Beard Collective. Are you rocking a beard this spring, cuz? Is your beard feeling dry, scaly? Could the flyaway hairs use some taming? Does your beard have leftover food in it? You can't be rocking a beard like that these days. There's companies out there that help you groom your beard in a nice, tight way. Go to DetroitBeardCollective.com, a Detroit company that provides quality beard care products. Go to their website, DetroitBeardCollective.com, and check out the many items that they sell. Beard care sets, combs, Detroit Beard Collective t-shirts, or the very popular Beard Crate, which is a comprehensive beard care set which allows you to choose your favorite Detroit Beard Collective product, all for one great price. DetroitBeardCollective.com.
Hey everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
All I want to know is if you got your popcorn ready. Do you got your popcorn ready?
5 seconds left in the game. Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
I said, are you strong? They said, I'm strong if you strong. And I said, we strong in there.
I'm a man. I'm 40.
Darren McCarty gets his shots in at Claude Lemieux. And look who came all the way out to try to help. Patrick Waugh. Oh, my goodness.
You are listening to the Doc and Jock Show on the Detroit Sports Podcast.
Here comes the axe, and here comes the smasher, the demolition, walking disaster. Pain and destruction is all in the name.
DetroitSportsPodcast.com presents to you the Doc and Jock Sports Podcast. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me for episode 93, my favorite co-host, Adam the Jock Strozinski. What's up, cuz?
What's up, buddy?
Man, we got lots to get to. Breaking news all across Detroit. Everyone wants to know, where the hell did Mike Babcock end up? As we're recording this, we know that Mike Babcock will no longer be the Red Wings head coach. Where he ends up, it's going to be great to keep track. You're going to be on the Twitter watch as we're recording this.
Yeah, I'm watching. If anything breaks, we'll cut in, we'll announce it. But right now, it's just a lot of speculation. According to Pierre LeBrun, either going to the Maple Leafs or to the Sharks. Rumor is the Leafs have offered Mike Babcock $8 million, which is obscene.
Whoa, that's a significant amount of money. And
There are players in the NHL who don't make that type of money.
And by all the reports, he
Like
wanted to go to a place where he could win.
Yeah, it's a
Toronto
dumpster
is
fire
like
in Toronto.
five minimum, probably 4 to 5 years away from being competitive. That would be a complete rebuild. But with Toronto, I would appreciate if he went there, because with the biggest risk comes the biggest reward. And if he won a Stanley Cup, or if he turned around the Maple Leafs after all the years of struggle that they've had, he'd be the king of Canada more than he is after winning the gold medals and all the success he's had as a head coach. So I'm hoping he does go to Toronto, rebuild that program, and we can now finally, as a Red Wing fan base, move on and let's start talking about the future of these Red Wings with potentially a new head coach. Jeff Blashill is the name that everyone's talking about, and he is the likely successor for Mike Babcock. But we got a lot to get to on this podcast. Our Tigers have been struggling this week. Man, it's been a little bit of a tough watch. Losers of 3 straight, and some issues have popped up, and some issues that continue to be a struggle are affecting these Detroit Tigers, and we're going to break it down. But before we get started, I'm just curious. Tonight is the finale of the David Letterman show, and I was wondering if you were a fan, if you ever caught up with that. Because for me personally, I was more of a Jay Leno guy, and now in the last 5 years, I'm really into watching Jimmy Kimmel. So I'm not really a fan of David Letterman, but I've caught a lot of his episodes. His humor just wasn't my style. So I was just curious if you were a fan of his, and did you ever catch any of his episodes, and reflecting on his well over 30-year career as a late night host.
You know what? I wasn't a fan of David Letterman at all. I didn't like anything he really did. And I don't know if maybe that puts me in the minority because some people like some of the things he did, or people really like him. They thought he was great. I didn't like any of his stuff. I always found him to be quite boring. Originally, I was a Johnny Carson fan. I love the Late Show with Johnny Carson, or the Late Night Show with Johnny Carson. I used to love that as a kid. I stayed up and would watch that. And then when that transitioned to Jay Leno, I started watching Leno just because he was the heir apparent. But in recent years, I've become a huge fan of Jimmy Fallon. I like Kimmel, but I like Fallon a little bit more. I like some of the stuff he does. I think he's really funny. I know making its way around Facebook and Twitter is Jimmy Fallon and Jamie Foxx sitting there doing their impersonations of different songs. And it's just hilarious what he can get different guests to do on his show. So I find him to be very funny.
Oh, it's interesting. No, I've stuck with Jimmy Kimmel. I haven't peeked in too much after Jay Leno left.
You've been a Kimmel fan since
a long time before he even got to radio.
Him and Corolla were doing the Man Show.
So it was
you've loved him forever, dude.
So it was a natural transition. His comedy fits in line with kind of what I find to be funny, that potty humor, that kind of tongue-in-cheek type of humor. So yeah, I've been a Jimmy Kimmel guy, but I'm going to tune in. I'm going to tune in and watch the finale, and just to kind of get a reflection. I like to see how things evolve and how people are going to remember him and all the great guests and stuff like that. And I'll be interested to see how that goes. You ready to kick off this podcast, breaking down all things Detroit sports in our own unique way?
Oh, yeah, dude. I'm excited to talk about Tigers and the V-Mart situation. I'm really, we have a basketball team. I feel like we've totally have forgotten about the Pistons, and we're going to talk about them on this podcast. And, of course, we've got issues with Babcock, so I want to get this thing started.
I just got the text on the phone, on the bat phone.
Did you?
Yep, the alert from WXYZ, Red Wings, a former Red Wings coach, Mike Babcock, to go to the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yep, the next coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs, right there, according to multiple reports.
Wow.
Greg Krupa just retweeted.
Okay.
So, yeah. Wow, dude. That's crazy. Life without Babcock.
Mike Babcock. We're definitely going to talk about it later in the podcast, so stay tuned. But we definitely want to hit on the Detroit Tigers because I think right now a lot of the fan base is gripping. I know I am. I'm kind of clenching my fist as we're talking about this because when you play the Brewers, you really have an expectation that you're going to take 2 of 3. Taking 3 games in a series is relatively tough, but you just came off of a great series. 2 wins versus St. Louis. You know, in the games they won, the hitting came back. But now you come back to Comerica Park. The fans kind of haven't been into it. The attendance kind of has been a little bit light. And they go up against the Brewers and power outage. Nothing's going on. You know, Victor Martinez is now on the DL. And Anibal Sanchez continues to struggle. And the Tigers right now have been a little bit of a tough watch.
Dude, they're brutal right now. What do they have? A combined 3 runs so far in their last 2 games against Milwaukee. This is horrible, man. They look awful. And a lot of that, I don't want to lay it at the feet of Victor Martinez, but he definitely hasn't been helping. They finally put him on the DL, which is something that they probably should have done a few months ago. Probably should have put him on the DL, I would say, back in March. He came off this knee surgery. And if you remember 2 years ago, it took him to well past the All-Star break to come back and really be an effective hitter. And that's what we need him for. We need him to hit. We don't need him to sit there and back up his catcher. Every now and then you let him play the field just so he can shake some more of the rust off so he doesn't sit there and get that mothball stink to him. So you don't put him on the DL. You sit there and you have him try to bat. You brought it up last week. He has 0 power from the left side. His knee is supposedly bone on bone. So now you're going to put him on the 15-day DL? This guy needs to go on the DL for at least 60 days. At least 60 days. Let him rest and then hope he can come back after the All-Star break and can hit the freaking laces off the ball. Because that's what happened last time. He is much older now. He's not going to be able to recuperate the same way. The guy needs time away from the game. And you putting him out there, forcing him to try to run the bases. We make fun of him all the time because he looks like the damn Tin Man trying to sit there and run up the right field line trying to get to first. You know, he squeaks when he walks, man. You got to oil those joints. And he needs a little bit of time away. Just needs time away. He changes the whole complexity of that batting order. He is that important to this team right now. And especially coming off of a season last year where he was in conversation. He was in the running for an MVP. That's how well he hit the baseball last year. And he kind of is the straw that stirs the drink here in Detroit, especially for the hitting, for the power that you get, because he protects Miguel Cabrera, who is oh so important to this lineup. he also sits there and alleviates pressure from guys like JD Martinez, Yoenis Cespedes in that back half of the batting order. You need him in your lineup. You should have sat there and you should have DL'd him much earlier, and you shouldn't have took him getting called out at first on a slow dribbler to second. It shouldn't have took that.
The part that was interesting was there have been talks in the organization about, hey, we've seen when Victor bats right-handed, he's been effective. He has a little bit more pop. He's getting on base a little bit more. So obviously the organization sat with him and talked to him and said, hey, listen, let's consider you batting a little bit more regularly right-handed. And he came out and said no. He basically told the organization, I don't feel comfortable. I'm not going to do it. And it's one of those situations where when I read that, I wasn't exactly comfortable with the player. I understand he hasn't done it a lot and he doesn't feel comfortable, and the organization was a little bit hesitant to make him feel uncomfortable. But why not try it? You're going to be on the field. Now, based on his choice, he's not on the field. And if you are a team player, you say that you want to be a help to the team, that you're a team guy, why not give it a chance? Why not give it a chance, bat right-handed, and if you go up there and it's a total flop, then you go on the DL and you could honestly say to yourself, when you look in the mirror, you know what, I gave it my best effort. But now you say, oh, I'm not comfortable, I'm not going to do it. And now you kind of make Brad Ausmus look a little bit weak. You make the organization look weak, and you're on the DL anyway. So you didn't help the team, and now you're out of the lineup.
I think maybe this was him trying to force the organization's hand to put him on the DL. I think he knows deep down and in his heart of hearts, I think he knows that he needs to go away. He needs to sit. He needs to rest, because you've seen what happened, like I said, 2 years ago. It's the same exact thing. He had off-season ACL surgery, wasn't the same player when he came back. I think he was batting like sub 240. And then they sat there after the All-Star break. The guy finally figured it out, turned it on, and he was batting above 340. And he at that point in the season, for that later half of the season, he was probably the Tigers' MVP. He was incredible that small chunk of time for the next, I think it was 3 months until the end of the season. He was just hitting the laces off the ball. So I think he knew, and I think he knows, and that's why he refused to sit there and do that. I think it was his way of forcing the organization to sit there and set him down. Because as a player, you don't want it to be left in your decision on whether or not you should sit. A player all the time is going to tell you he wants to play. It's just their nature. It doesn't matter if they've got one leg. You ever see oh damn it, what was it? It was the Monty Python with the guy in the woods when the knight who sat there and he's like, come back here and fight me, and he's got no arms, no legs, and the guy's like, what are you gonna do, bleed on me? That's exactly what it is. An athlete's gonna sit there and they're gonna go until all they're doing is bleeding on you. It's how they're built. It's what it is. So this was Victor Martinez, I believe, putting the organization on the spot, saying, hey, if you want me to sit, you're gonna have to DL me and sit me. And the organization now at this point has to be smart enough to say, hey, we don't want you back until after the All-Star break. Make sure you're right. You come back, and we're going to try to maintain. You come back, we'll turn it on, and we'll get into the playoffs, and hopefully we can make some noise, because this window is closing, and it looks like it's closing very rapidly. And now you've got Victor Martinez on the hook for the next couple of years with a pretty decent contract.
When you watch the Tigers play, a point that people are noticing is when we play at night, our hitting and our power numbers go way down versus when we play day games. It really is a significant number. And when you read the numbers, it's like night and day. You're like, wow, can we schedule some more day games for these Tigers? When they are raking at Comerica Park, it's usually at a day game, at a 1 p.m. game. So maybe today's game versus Houston will be a good start to the series because it's a 1 o'clock game. It's really interesting to look at and think about. This Tiger team and their inconsistencies hitting really is kind of reflected by when they play the game.
The time of day that they play.
It really is. The numbers, if you look at them, their production in day games versus their production in night games is really night and day. And it's one of those things where you would think a team that's built this way would not have long stretches of games where they score 1 run, 2 runs, 1 run. Yes, they go up against great pitching from time to time, but you would think they could find a little bit of a healthy balance or when they are hitting, they get 9 and 10 runs, and then when they're not, it's like 1 or 2. And it's one of those things where we keep asking, where is the balance? Where is the consistency? Why is the power? Why is the hitting so inconsistent? It's really, I don't know, is it the weather? Is it Comerica? Is it, especially when they did tough out some tough games for St. Louis, you would think that they would not lose 3 games in a row.
You're absolutely right. Especially when you have, like you said, the batting lineup that they bring to the ballpark on a regular basis. And I'm going to count Ian Kinsler as a power hitter because he does have power in that bat. But you've got essentially 5 power hitters with a healthy Victor Martinez. And I know he's not healthy right now, but that's 5 guys at the top of your lineup who can sit there and just mash the baseball. Just send it out of the ballpark. And yet you can't muster runs. And in the way the back half is set up, you've got some of your quicker, speedier guys on that back half who can steal you bases. All they've got to do is get on. And yet you can't move guys around. You can't get guys to cross home plate. It's kind of perplexing. And I think it kind of goes along with that anomaly of them hitting the baseball better when it's daylight out as opposed to when it's nighttime out, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And I think it's just one of those nuances of the game and just kind of funny that it happens that way.
Now we got to look too. Kansas City refuses to lose. It's like one of those things where every game that we're not playing well, when we lose 3 straight, Kansas City's going out there and is raking. As Tigers fans, we're sitting here and we're going, come on now, let's field a team. Let's play much more consistent baseball. Let's play smart, and let's have the starting pitchers, not give up 3 home runs back to back to back. The Brewers weren't known as a mashing team, and they come into Comerica Park, they come into our house, and they go back to back to back off Anibal Sanchez. When you look at him,
I got some information real quick.
Go ahead.
So according to the report that I've got coming in right now, it's an 8-year contract worth around $50 million for Mike Babcock. What does that break down to a year? Was that like $6 million? Nah,
six and change, yeah.
Some change, right?
Yep. That's quite a bump up. Toronto brought the hammer.
6.25 per year.
Wow.
So they basically doubled what the Wings were offering, is what it was.
Wow. What numbers?
Insane, dude. There are superstar players in this league that don't make money like that. That's incredible. He's getting paid what a top 15 goal scorer is making to go coach the Toronto Maple Leafs and try to bring them back to, I don't know if Toronto ever had days of glory, and I'm a hockey fan, so don't go on Twitter and don't try to blast me. I know, like, back when it was the original 6, they were decent, but they haven't been good for 25 years now. They've been shit. So, unbelievable, dude. Unbelievable.
8 years, enough time, and you're back in Canada. Wow,
dude! I can't wait till we talk Babcock. I'm excited to talk Babcock right now. So
okay,
let's finish up with this stuff and let's get we had Babcock in the whole wing thing set for the later half of the show, and I'm still cool with it staying there. If you want to leave it, let it stay there. But I can't wait to talk Babcock.
Okay, we will do that. And now with Babcock leaving, guess who is the longest tenured coach in Michigan? Brad Ausmus. You believe that? Brad Ausmus is now the longest tenured head coach or manager in the state of Michigan.
Professional head coach?
Yeah. You believe that?
Yeah, it's crazy. That's insane, yeah.
Yeah.
And if you want to include our 2 major college teams, it'd be Mark D'Antonio.
What do you, that story, it's a breaking story, and now we get a chance to kind of break it down a little bit and see how the Red Wings are going to pan out. But to wrap up with the Tigers, do you think that as we sit here, we're overreacting to the ups and downs? They still are well over 500. They're still relatively close in the division. It's just the ups and downs. Some people in the media will say, well, you fans don't know the ups and downs about baseball. But it's not that we don't know what's going on in the game. It's the style of play that we see. We don't see the guys who we think are going to produce. And we see a team that is struggling on offense when you've basically built a team that is quote unquote going to be offensively a giant. So that's why it's concerning. That's why it's one of those things where you look at it and you're like, man, I got to tune away. I got to watch the NBA when the Tigers play the Brewers. It sucks. You want to be able to sit down and enjoy a baseball game and not get shelled. You can lose games 3-2, 4-3, 5-4, and play good and have a couple breaks not go your way. But when you're in your own house after a road trip and you get dominated, it's a little bit concerning and it's a little bit frustrating.
The way these last couple games have gone has just been probably the most, I don't know if heartbreaking is the way to put it. It makes you angry. You want to throw your phone, you want to throw your fist, you want to throw anything through your TV. The other night, you had Anibal Sanchez go up there and sit there and try to pitch. And I say try to pitch because it really looked like somebody wheeled a 55-gallon drum of gasoline with an Anibal Sanchez jersey on it and said, hey, go throw batting practice, and then just set it on fire. Threw a match into the open top and just watched the thing burn because they did nothing right. He couldn't get balls across the plate. The defense didn't help him out. There are times where this defense makes miraculous plays. You've seen it this last weekend in St. Louis. It was incredible to watch what the defense was able to do, some of the plays that they were able to make, throwing guys out at second base, running in and making diving catches. And then there's other times where you got your third baseman booting balls across the entire infield. You know, I mean, it's just, this team is so up and down right now. And you're right, baseball is a game of streaks. It's what it is. It's how it's always been. You got guys who will sit there and they'll hit 600 for a month, and then they'll go on a 2-month tear where they can't sit there and buy a hit. And in the end, it all balances out, and water always finds its level. This is the one sport where you can say that if you wait around long enough, the best team's going to win, because water will always find its level in baseball. It's just the way it is.
We got a chance now to see how the Tigers will perform in warmer weather as we hit June, as we approach July. The bats, I think, will turn around and they'll be more consistent. It's just that we're not just comparing the Tigers. Now we're watching Kansas City, and they're playing a good brand of baseball. They're solid in all areas.
Dude, if we keep tricking around, Minnesota's going to take over second in this division. Minnesota's on our heels. Minnesota. Seriously, Minnesota.
Who would have thunk it? But Paul Molitor was brought there for a reason. Once his system gets instilled, yeah, they're not. We're playing well versus them, so I'm not as concerned, because when we play them, we have been quite successful. But yeah, I want.
They're nipping at our heels, though.
This weekend is going to be key, and we'll revisit the Tigers on the next podcast. But 4 games versus a Houston team that's playing well. We better come out of this series with at least a split, or maybe take 3 out of 4. Otherwise, we're going to have some significant issues to talk about on the next podcast. But let's take a quick break. Let's recheck. Let's revisit everything, and let's talk Babcock next on the Detroit Sports Podcast. Doc and Jock Podcast 93. DetroitSportsPodcast.com. All right, cuz, let's check in with one of our favorite sponsors, Sport Displays Jersey Mount. The Sport Displays Jersey Mount are the easiest and most affordable way to proudly show off your favorite jersey, uniform, sweater, t-shirt, or costume. With its unique design, Sport Display Jersey Mounts are the only hangers on the market that can be mounted to any surface. This allows for easy access to your favorite jersey on game day by simply snapping the rod into or out of the holder. You've got yourself an Anthony Mantha jersey, you want to hang it up. If you have a Steve Yzerman jersey, and if Tampa Bay wins the Stanley Cup, he not only is a great executive, you want to hang up his Detroit Red Wing jersey in your office, simply snap the jersey mount on and off. It's easy to use. The jersey mount really adds to any man cave. Sport Display jersey mounts are affordable, easy to install. They can be mounted anywhere to both wall or ceiling. If you want, go to jerseymount.com/Detroit-sports-podcast and get a jersey mount and get 5% off. Visit jerseymount.com and check out a really great product that really adds to any man cave. jerseymount.com, get 5% off. If you're a fan of Michigan, cuz, then you have to check out uofmdiehards.com. Check them out on Twitter. Check out their Facebook page. They are a page that's dedicated to all things University of Michigan. They follow every game. They follow recruits. They have great interviews. uofmdiehards.com. Doc and Jock, check out that website quite a bit. If you're a fan of Michigan, there's no better website to check out than uofmdiehards.com.
I'm go blue, baby.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for your support. Lots of ways to support us here at the podcast. If you like what you're listening to, if you enjoy the podcast, if you want us to continue to provide great content every Monday and Thursday, if you want us to continue to take phone calls, just go to our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Click through those banner links. Lots of great online deals. I know everybody that's listening likes to save money. DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Click through those banner links, bookmark them, and every time you shop online, nothing extra happens. You get charged no more money. But when you shop online through DetroitSportsPodcast.com, they kick us back a little something, and we can continue to provide great content. DetroitSportsPodcast.com. We greatly appreciate it. Yes, sir. Welcome back. Thank you for downloading another episode of the Doc and Jock Sports Podcast on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. What a great time to be recording this podcast. Right when the news broke, we got the alert while we're talking. Mike Babcock has left, and I know Cousin Adam has so many reactions, has so much that's on his mind. But, my initial reaction is good for Mike Babcock. this is the job. This is the marquee job. In Detroit, we did talk to Jeff Rieger on our last podcast from the ticket, and we did kind of talk a little bit about where Babcock could end up. But for a coach that has a lot of experience, he's now reached the pinnacle of his career. He's got the massive contract. He's going to a town that is rabid. When he gets off this plane, whenever it comes to take him to Toronto, the city's going to shut down. It's basically going to be the Mike Babcock and the Maple Leafs wherever they go from now on. The radio station dials will always be on. The calls will always be about what's going on with the Maple Leafs. And from day one, he's going to have the expectation to bring home a Stanley Cup. That's all you can ask for, really. And he got paid. But by all accounts, by what you're texting and the information that's coming across the Twitter sphere and the news, double what the Red Wings potentially offered. Not only did you market yourself perfectly, it kind of seemed like the negotiations kind of happened really all real fast, knowing that Toronto and the other teams that came in kind of like, okay, now we're going to start bidding. Boom, here we go. And his agent must have been like, finally, because the negotiation kind of stalled. Before today, everything was kind of quiet, like, it was like he was settling on Buffalo or settling somewhere.
It seemed like everything picked up late Tuesday night when there was talk about him working on a contract with Buffalo. And all that information leaked out. And it was a great ploy by his agent to sit there and leak some of that information out, saying that it was in excess of $5 million a season. He was leaning towards Buffalo. And then you wake up in the morning and everything's kind of going along. And then lunchtime kind of hits on Wednesday. And there's talk that the Wings are out of it, that the Wings don't have a shot at it anymore. It was almost like the last hour, Toronto comes in and almost in an act of desperation say, hey, we're going to pony up this much more. Come coach us. And good for Babcock. There were talks that he was doing this to help out the coaching fraternity. It really and truly, to me, seems like it's a bit of a cash grab, because going into this whole thing, things were said that winning's important, going to a contender, going to basically a playoff perennial team were important to him, and instead you end up in Toronto.
Yeah, now I want to ask, before we get into all this regarding Babcock and what's going on, the thought I just have now is, do the Red Wings as an organization lose a little bit of cachet and respect based on the fact that Mike Babcock used you as leveraged and used you to drag this along? You had Mike Babcock sitting with Ken Holland doing interviews and talking and saying, hey, I got to weigh my options. It was like one of those things where you had a chance to keep him, but it might have been better as an organization had you just kind of distanced yourself from him and just say, listen, Mike, we're going to negotiate in good faith. But the way it kind of looked publicly, it looked like the Red Wings kind of were weak and sheepish in this situation from my perspective. They look weak. I mean, you don't sit there and go to a foreign country and a scouting event and things like that, sit with the guy that's basically trying to get the most money possible and sit there and Ken Holland, in my opinion, didn't do himself the best in terms of how this played out with Babcock. And now Babcock, is gone to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and the Red Wings, I don't think they're going to do a great big search for coaches. They're going to take Blashill. So I just don't think that the Red Wings, in the way I'm conceptualizing it, they don't look good.
I think there's two ways to look at it. There's the way that you're looking at it right now. There's a way of looking at it as if, I believe the Wings thought that they were playing with house money. If they got to keep Babcock, great. But they've been prepared for Babcock to leave for a couple of years now. That's why they made Blashill the highest paid coach in the AHL. So I think they were ready for this change. I think they anticipated this change coming. After seeing how far Babcock's been able to get them the last couple of years, I think they themselves were ready for a change. And that's why they were only willing to sit there and give him maybe a 4-year contract. And then it came back that it was going to be a 2-year contract. And then there were talks that it might even be a shorter term contract than 2 years. And I think that the Wings were getting themselves ready and almost like moving their chess pieces around the board to sit there and get ready to not to distance themselves, but to make that separation with Babcock, whether it be this year, next year, 2 years down the road, or 4 years down the road. I think they were making the moves and the necessary adjustments to get ready to sit there and move on from Babcock. And at the same time, I think this was a great PR stunt that they did. How many teams can you name in the history of sports? How old are you? 34?
36.
36. Okay. So in your 36 years of life, how many teams can you name that have ever done anything like this, where they've given other teams permission to sit there and talk to their coach And then they've sat there and they've gone along with that coach on doing press junkets where they sit there and they talk about the coach possibly leaving. They sit there and they do these other things with the coach, and then they go and they negotiate openly, and they talk about how much they're going to give the coach if the coach stays. You never see this happen. So I think this right here looks really good for other coaches who, if things don't work out with Blashill, they can then say, hey, look what we did for Mike. You know, things didn't work out with Jeff, but look what we did for Mike. I was like, we'll treat you great. Come on over here. We'll treat you great. And if anything, you know what I'm saying? Come hang out, coach us for 10 years, win us a cup. And then, hey, we'll give you the same service. We'll roll out the red carpet and we'll send you on your way to your multi-billion-dollar deal.
Let's check the Twitter sphere real fast. I threw it out there. How did the Red Wings handle this and your reaction? At Maze Wings tweeted us, I actually gained some respect for Holland. I wanted Babs to stay, but not at that price. At CMAD3961, put a question mark saying the Red Wings lack of respect, question mark, for not being suckers and paying someone 4 times the market rate. At Joe Boo 3 says, no way. Babcock loses respect, though. He wasn't ever coming back. The Wings got played.
See, I don't think the Wings got played, though. I think the Wings knew what they were doing the whole time. And I think they were comfortable with this going either way. If Babcock came back, great. If Babcock left, great. I think, like I said, I think they were playing with house money.
At Sue B tweets us, I think the Wings probably gave him a push and said thank you, but go ahead and move on. We had a good team before, and we will after.
On top of it, during all of these conversations that he was having, that Babcock was having with the media, everybody came out and basically said this Wings team going forward will be stacked. The Wings are one of the deepest franchises in the NHL. So if Babcock wants to stay because winning's important, the Wings are the team to stay with. So everybody's come out and everybody's been very complimentary of the Detroit organization. The thing that I find interesting, I don't know if Mike Babcock could have came back to this team after all of this. I think he would have lost the locker room because I think there was a lot of respect that he probably lost in that locker room going around and basically, for lack of a better term, whoring himself. I really feel like he sat there and he sold himself. You get
good negotiation. He did not sell himself.
No,
perfect
negotiation. I don't think it was good negotiation at all because
4 times the market rate.
Yes, I agree with that. But he went and he was expecting teams. He was expecting perennial playoff contenders to contact him. The Flyers, the Sharks, the Bruins. He was expecting all these people to come knocking on his door. And you know what he got? He got silence. Flyers didn't come knocking on his door. He initiated the contact with the Sharks. The Sharks didn't want to. The Sharks did it out of a courtesy because Mike went to them and said, "Hey, do you guys want to talk to me about your coaching vacancy?" I mean, you had teams like the Oilers who came out after him. A team that is now winning, the Blues, came after him. But that was a weird, sticky situation because they still have a coach there, a coach in place who's Mike Babcock's friend. So that makes that really weird. And then other than that, you have losers like Toronto and Buffalo. So I think this market was a lot softer than what he thought. And you're right, financially, he did a great job for himself. Made himself millions more than the Wings were willing to pay for him. But at the same time, I think you lose respect, you lose credibility because you just sold yourself. You just went out there and you basically showed off your ass and you showed off your tits and you said, hey, for 6 1/4, you get all this. And great for you, you got 6 1/4, bro. But there's no way you can come back to this Red Wing locker room and you can still coach these players and demand their respect and command their respect the same way before you done all this.
All right, here's why I love our Twitter page, at Detroit Podcast, at CNIERMANN, read my mind perfectly. He tweeted us, only mistake was saying they wouldn't be outbid, and then getting outbid. Both sides very amicable and open otherwise. The Red Wings said, hey, we're going to match. But those numbers are something that I don't think they could have matched.
Yeah.
So I think in that aspect, in terms of how this played out, in terms of public perception, no, I don't think a lot of people are going to care because people were ready for a change. But I'm looking at it from a negotiating standpoint. They showed Babcock a little bit too much respect. What happens when Holland negotiates with a friend? You know, he said it himself. That TSN interview with Mike Babcock was really interesting to kind of look at and break down from a negotiating standpoint. From a negotiating standpoint, you had a guy that was your friend. You had a guy that was basically going around trying to get the best offer possible. And he said it was about winning, but in the end, He went to an organization that was basically the worst organization to go to in terms of talent, in terms of the organization, top to bottom. It's going to be some work. So he went for a huge offer for a huge opportunity. And so from that perspective, the Wings should have separated themselves at the time that the contract ran out. They should have separated themselves and said, listen, we're going to give you a chance. Come back to us. And then, hey, we're going to negotiate in good faith. If it's a fair offer, we'll give it to you. But if the numbers don't work out, we'll be in a good spot. But the way it dragged out now, do you think you can do a thorough coaching search now? No, you could have got McClelland. You don't think 2 weeks later we could have got McClelland to come back here?
I think they knew who they wanted the entire time. That's a great question. And that's why I feel like they don't have egg on their face for the way that they handled this, because they knew what they had in their back pocket. I think he's going to be a great coach, and I think he's going to come in, and I think he's going to work out excellently. I think it's going to be outstanding. Everything you hear about Blashill is that he's the man. He's great. He's the next young mind.
No experience
in the NHL, but you see what he's done in the AHL. And he's done it with these players that are on this roster right now. So who better to get through to them than the coach who has helped shape and mold them? Who's the guy that you want molding this team for the future? Because we've talked about it before. This old run, these guys of Pavel and Hank and Franzen's bumhead and Cronwall, these guys are on their way out. You have a new voice in that locker room now who knows how to get through to these younger players, how to energize them, how to get the most out of them, and how to put them in spots for them to succeed, because he's been with them most of the time, and he's done it before. You're right, he hasn't done it on this level, but he's done it on the level right below it, and he was headed out the door. You were going to lose him. If you kept Babcock, you were losing him. After the AHL playoffs wrapped up, whether you won the Calder Cup or not, you were losing him, because everybody wanted to talk to him. Everybody wanted a piece of him. They wanted a piece of him for years now. So you don't think that the book's already been out there about this guy? That's why I think the Wings were smart the way they handled it, because three things. You sit there and you do Babcock a favor, right? And you negotiate in good faith with Mike Babcock. Mike goes and he's able to run up the bidding war between multiple teams to get himself $6.25 million per season, which is great, because that's exactly what he did the past 48 hours is essentially what he ended up doing, stemming from Tuesday night all the way until today, right? He sat there and he got with Buffalo and they said $5 million, and he let that leak. And then Toronto came in and said, well, hey, we'll do this. And then there was talks about him going back to Buffalo, and then Toronto was like, well, maybe we'll do this. And there was this back and forth until he got the deal that he wanted. And then in the end, you end up with the guy who I think deep down you really wanted anyways. Because after 10 years, that's a lot of time with the same coach. It's a lot of time under the same regime. And you've heard for a while that players don't like playing for him. There was talks about Pavel leaving because he didn't want to play for Babcock anymore a few years ago. We had that discussion on this very same podcast. And everybody all works out for everybody.
Everybody's a little bit happy, and Babcock gets a new challenge, and now we turn the page. And you brought up the point I want to talk about. Does it behoove the Red Wings to just automatically promote Blashill and go about it this way, not open up the coaching search a little bit further? Maybe, I wish that's why the timing is a little bit tough, in that, maybe you could have brought in McClelland, who worked directly under Babcock, but maybe, the Wings are thinking it's time for a new fresh start, a guy that we've brought up in our organization that we're high on. So they've put now their eggs in the basket of Blashill from Grand Rapids, and he's going to come in here, and the pressure's going to be great. It's not one of those things where he can just come in and learn on the job.
He walks into a hot seat, because everybody's heard about him now. It was like when Jimmy Howard was coming up. Everybody heard about Jimmy Howard for what seemed like 12 years. I mean, it was only like 4, but it seemed like forever. So when Jimmy Howard finally took the reins over, you're like, all right, let's win us a cup. And that guy hasn't been able to get us out of the second round. So he comes in on a very hot seat, because he's taking over for a cup-winning coach, a guy who has won essentially everywhere he's been. He comes in now, and everybody knows about him because of what he's done in the past. And he's expected to win. And that's probably one of the hardest things to do when you're a head coach, is you come in and you fill the shoes of, I don't want to say Babcock's a legend, but you fill the shoes of a guy who's possibly a Hall of Fame coach. And you're basically handed the reins and said, now win us a cup. And we talk about this like he's already been named their head coach. He hasn't been named their head coach. And I don't know if it does behoove the Wings to go out there and conduct a search at this point, because who's really out there that you want? I mean, is there a name out there that sticks out to you that you really want over the guy that you've helped cultivate? Because I don't think there's anybody out there.
No, exactly.
I think the guy that you wanted the whole time was in your organization. You just had to find a way to move the guy who was above him out.
Okay, so now the Red Wings have now, after 10 years, turned the page. We go from Mike Babcock to Jeff Blashill. What are the Red Wings going to do in the offseason? Who are they going to bring in? Does this allow us to go out and actually recruit some big-name free agents? Doesn't look like this year's class is as good, potentially, as in future years. I know I've read in a couple years the free agent class is going to be outstanding. And do we get some? But right now, the Red Wings are in that situation where they're kind of like a first-round, second-round team, and they need to get over the hump. We're going to get a third-round pick in the next couple years, another pick, maybe potentially that can produce and help us get to that next level. But, wow, it's quite a day here in Detroit, knowing how this is kind of all played out and kind of came to a crescendo, and Mike Babcock ends up in Toronto. So the question that most people are going to think is, okay, who's going to have success first? Mike Babcock starting from 0 or less than 0 with that organization, who's strapped and the talent is really thin, or Detroit now, who is entering into the season with a first-year head coach? Who's going to have more success maybe next season, and who gets to the Cup Finals faster? Toronto or the Red Wings?
It depends on what you set your success level at. Is success for Toronto just making the playoffs? Then yeah, I think they'll probably make the playoffs next year because Babcock seems to have that touch. For the Wings, does that mean making it into the second round and being competitive in the second round? I think that's a giant possibility. Does that mean winning a cup for the Wings? Because it's always cup or bust for us, right? Even when we have little to no talent and we struggle to make it in, we always feel like we have a shot to at least win a cup. So I think it depends on where you set those markers at.
Okay, first step, who will get to the Cup Final first?
The Wings.
Okay.
Hands down.
Who will get to the Conference Finals then first?
Wings.
So you're thinking
this is the thing, though. These two teams are going to see each other. This is what makes this great. This used to be a rivalry. This used to be hatred. And now you just added some spice to it. So the only way for the Maple Leafs to get that far and the only way for the Wings to get that far, essentially, they've got to go through each other. And they've got to beat each other up throughout the regular season. So this makes this very interesting. And this is great. What would be awesome, what would be outstanding, is if next year the Wings are seated in first place going into the playoffs, and Toronto is anywhere between 2, 3, and 4. That fourth, if they're in the fourth spot, they don't have to cross over. So that way the Wings will at least see Toronto possibly one time out of this whole deal. It would be outstanding. It'd be great because there would be storylines galore here. It'd be outstanding.
Yeah, a playoff series the first year. Whoo.
I think the Wings are in a much better spot.
Better goaltending, better young talent. Now we got
deeper. It's you know what, and the thing is, contractually, we do have some bad money. We've got contracts like Johan Franzen. We've got Stephen Weiss's contract. We do have some bad contracts that are tying up some money. If they can find out a way to lose some of that money, I'm going to call it dead money. They can find a way to lose some of that dead money. They can go out and they can be a major player in free agency. Whereas Toronto has huge contracts for multiple years wrapped up in guys like Phaneuf and Phil Kessel. And those contracts are going to be harder to move than a guy like a Johan Franzen who may have to retire. If he retires, some of that contract is then voided off. You have a Stephen Weiss, but if you give that contract and you give a little something else with that contract and maybe either take a not as good contract on, you can maybe do some stuff and you can do some restructuring where it's really hard to sell Dion Phaneuf at $7 million and he's got like 6 years left on that contract. That's hard because that means teams are taking out a huge lump of salary for a guy who in 2 years will be at the end of his career or on the downside of his career if he's not already there yet.
The one thing I'm interested to see is how much push and cachet does Blashill have? Does he just say, you know what? I'm here. I want the guys in the room. I want Pulkkinen on this roster. I want Ouellette up here. I want the young guys, and let's just go for it. Because, who really was keeping the young players down? Was it really an organizational decision with Holland and Babcock together? Or was it just Babcock going, no, I don't want a guy like Pulkkinen because he's not a solid two-way player up on the roster yet? Are the Red Wings going to now go for it a little bit further and let these young players just come up? Let's just come up and let them get some experience. I'm so fascinated to see what training camp is going to look like in Traverse City, who's going to be there, who's going to make it out. And I just now, there's a little bit of new life a little bit of new energy with the Red Wings, and that's always a good thing. I'm just hoping that
Every second-year dude from Grand Rapids is in training camp in Traverse City. Everybody, just the whole AHL squad. Let's roll.
let's roll. Let's see
Let's
what's going
roll.
down.
All of you guys. Let's just go.
No, it brings-
Whoever makes it out, makes it out.
Yeah, it brings new life into Hockeytown. I mean, we got a new head coach. We're going to have probably a new team, a new look team. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of the same players, but the way they play is going to be a little bit similar to how Babcock was because he was under him. He was influenced by Babcock, but maybe with a softer edge.
He was a pupil of his.
Maybe with a softer edge. Maybe not such a sharp tongue. Maybe one MFer instead of 4. You never know.
I'll be interested to see who he hires on to complete his staff. 'Cause
I think Granato will be there.
I think
he
that
should
says
stay.
a lot. I think some of those guys should come.
Yeah.
I really do. I think some of those guys should stay because they did a lot of good things with that power play, with that penalty kill. Those were definite pluses this season.
If Granato's on, you have a kind of a slight backup plan as somebody maybe as the first potential A/B replacement for Blashill. Should he just be awful?
Yes, if things get carry, yes.
If things get like totally bad,
Totally crazy.
yeah,
Yep.
maybe
Yep, I
that'll be the
agree.
guy.
Favorite non-pornographic magazine to masturbate to?
Good housekeeping.
If you were a chick, who's the one guy you would sleep with?
John Stamos.
What? Did we just become best friends?
Yup.
Do you want to go do karate in the garage?
Yup.
It's very rare that we ever agree on things. I agree.
No, well, obviously you saw his influence on the special teams, on the power play, the penalty kill. He had an impact.
Yes.
He was he in by all accounts, everyone in the room liked him, and he was easy to work with, and he's got a lot of NHL experience. He's going to be a head coach fairly soon, in my opinion. He just think he's got a little bit more seasoning to get maybe behind the bench, and we'll see what happens. But this is a good time, I think. The Red Wings are still going to be a playoff team. We are talking about how do we get this team from a first, second round team to a Stanley Cup winning team. Couple more scores, shore up the defense, keep Mrazek in net all season. You have a chance.
I agree.
Okay, good day, man. I can't believe it broke as we were doing this. That was kind of cool.
It was cool.
Good stuff. All right, we're going to take a break, refresh, kind of relax a little bit because we've been, I know you've been on the Twitter. I've been on the Twitter. We've been looking. It's
I'm all
so
hot
funny.
and sweaty and stuff, man. Like just sitting there just cooking on Babcock stuff.
And that's why I love Twitter because you get the information from like 5 different sources you can check, and you got people who are looking at plane flights, and people nowadays can get their news much faster in a much more succinct way than in years past. I mean, look, boom, you check Twitter, you got 5-6 guys who are on the beat, boom, it's all good.
It's great, dude.
It's good stuff. Let's take a break. Let's play a round of Jock Jams to end this podcast, talk a little bit more sports, and then we'll wrap it up. Doc and Jock, episode 93, Detroit Sports Podcast.com. Definitely check out the guys at the Detroit Sports Nation, DetroitSportsNation.com. Great website. They are unbelievable. They are killing it on Facebook. Give them a like at their Facebook page, Detroit Sports Nation, and definitely check out their website, DetroitSportsNation.com. Our collaboration with them has been excellent, and they continue to be a strong presence here on the podcast because they bring the noise and they have great content. So thank you guys again. We can't thank you enough.
You're the future of our business, and I know when you guys have a podcast like this, our future is in good hands.
You got to check out their stuff. I mean, I'm really impressed by it. You guys have probably one of the better ones I've seen in the country.
Wow.
In a short period of time, you've done good work. Look at me kissing your hand.
I know.
All right, episode 93, rolling on. Thanks everyone who downloads this on iTunes, Stitcher, Podomatic. Thank you so much. We greatly appreciate it. Podbay, our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. There should be no reason why you don't get this podcast. Often imitated, never duplicated. I love how some are trying to do podcasts, but they need to really check out how we're doing things here. Definitely, Doc and Jock got it going on. We got the ability to take your phone calls, interactive with the Twitter page. I love doing this, and I hope that it comes through these airwaves and this microphone how much we love talking Detroit sports and breaking down other sports as well. Have you been checking in on the NBA, NHL finals, cuz?
Oh, yeah.
Good
Watching
stuff.
both. More NHL than NBA.
Okay, I figured as much.
Yeah. I'm
Okay.
a hockey guy.
We're about to play a round of Jock Jams, and this is where the Doc presents the Jock 3 great questions, and he shares his great sports knowledge in what we call Jock Jams. All right, right, cuz when the Tigers were getting blown out versus Milwaukee, I inevitably had to turn to the NBA draft lottery. It's a circus. They definitely hype it up. What do you know? Who moved up in the draft? The LA Lakers. They didn't go all the way and fully tip their hand and give them the number 1 pick, but they moved up. But the Timberwolves, the 76ers, and the Lakers.
Correct.
The top 3 in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
But talking about our Pistons, everyone thought that they would get number 8 based on the percentages, and true to form, the Pistons got the 8th pick. What do you think the Pistons' needs are, and who do you think are likely candidates to take at that spot?
The Pistons, I don't think I've made any bones about it. What they need is a small forward, and they need a power forward. They need somebody. What they need to do is they need to build up some around Andre Drummond down low is what they have to do. Stan Van Gundy likes guys who can shoot the 3 ball. He likes guys who can rebound. Or if you're going to play for Stan Van Gundy, you got to be able to defend. I think Greg Monroe is gone after this season. I think he's going someplace else. So I sat there and I was going through everything and I was looking, and I've got 3 guys who come top of mind that I would like the Pistons to go get. First one, small forward out of Duke, 6'6", 223 pounds. Justice Winslow. He's a slashing player who can shoot the 3, which Stan Van loves. He can play defense, and he can guard at least 3 different positions. He's got lateral quickness, length, and reach. He can frustrate guards, small forwards, power forwards, and he can even match up against smaller centers. He's a prototypical Stan Van Gundy guy. He's a wing that can kind of create his own shot. Got another small forward for you out of Arizona. Stanley Johnson coming in at 6'7". He's a long one, 242. All right, that's how much he weighs. He has size, length that allow him to guard anywhere from a point guard to a power forward. Another guy who can defend. He's a very complete player that can attack the rim, pass the rock, and defend. Mixes up with his aggressiveness, and he's got a really high basketball IQ. He was probably the most complete player for Arizona last year. Makes him a nice fit for Stan Van Gundy. As a freshman, because he's a freshman, he made more than 37% of his three-point shots. So that's decent. That's nice. It's good to hear, you know what I'm saying? And on top of that, he shot 44% from the field. So the kid can put the rock in the hole. And then moving on, this is a guy I like. I know Vinny Stubbs was sitting there going off on the Motor City Sports Rant, talking about how we can't draft. There you go. Talking about how you can't draft white players, right? But Wisconsin's own Frank Kaminsky III. This guy's got an NBA body. It's been crafted over 4 years in college. He's a senior. It's very rare that you see seniors in these drafts. This dude's a senior. He's gotten better every single season he was in college. And he's pretty much mastered his craft down low and on the perimeter. He's a versatile player. He's one of those big guys who can dribble a ball and can still hit a mid-range jumper. You don't ever see this in this league. The guy can shoot the 3, which gives Stan Van Gundy multiple options because he can play power forward when Andre Drummond's on the floor. He can also move to center when Andre Drummond's on the bench. So some versatility there for you. And I don't know if he's got the potential to become a star, but I think he's a solid number 2. I think the guy's got great talent. So those are the 3 guys that I would target. There's all this talk about different dudes coming from overseas. Drew Sharp wrote an article about it. No.
Hashtag Hazonja.
Yeah, after Darko, stay away. Stay away. You see what you get with these guys, right? I know 2 of them are freshmen, but Frank the Tank's a senior. So you know what you're going to get with these guys. These guys can shoot the ball, they can pass, they can defend. And that's what you want. And these guys they're all big, tall guys. They all have NBA bodies. Okay. So I think those guys would fit nicely.
I'm all aboard the Frank Kaminsky train, but I think at 8, it's a little bit of not a value pick. So if you want to get him, by most draft boards, he's kind of like projected to go 13, 14. So maybe if you can get a productive player and move down.
I've seen him as high as 10.
That's a little high, I think, in my opinion. I think 13 to 15 is the best spot for him. I don't think we're going to get a chance to worry about Hazonja. I think he'll go 1 or 2 picks ahead of where the Pistons are. I think we have a chance to get one of the players from Kentucky, and maybe we'll stay in that spot, or maybe we'll trade back. It'll be interesting to see. Very good points.
I think by them drafting 8, though, that's kind of right where they want to be. For what they need to address their needs, this draft goes great for needs and value. I think they're both right there at that 8th spot. If you can maybe move back 1, maybe move up 1, you're right in that area where you want to be. This kind of works out great because if they got lucky enough to get a first overall pick, what are you going to do with that? Do you really need a center? You don't. If you were to get a top 5 pick, do you really need a point guard? You got arguably 2 right now, depending on what happens with Brandon Jennings and if he can come back off that rehab for that Achilles. But You've already promised Reggie Jackson that he's your point guard of the future. You don't need another 2 guard because you got Caldwell Pope. I think this works out perfect for need and for value.
Yeah, I think if they stay, a lot of people are looking at from Kentucky 7-footer Willie Cauley-Stein as being there at 8. So if he's there, I hope that they do take him. That would be a player that could potentially put some butts back in the seats. All right, good stuff. Now, this plays into a little bit about the next question, and I know a little bit about how you're thinking, but I'm interested to get your opinion as to what is the better watch right now on TV, the NHL Final Four or the NBA Final Four? I definitely caught a peek at Houston Golden State Game 1. Wow. I was glued to the TV, and I was just like, oh my gosh. And when I was watching, I always go, okay, how are the Pistons going to compare to these two teams? Not even close. We're 3-4 years away minimum of even looking like competing versus teams in the West. So for ultimate success for Pistons fan, we're going to have to wait. But the NBA's Final Four is going to be great. You got teams like Cleveland, Atlanta. You got Houston and Golden State. It's very exciting. And now on the other end, my eyes were burning. 3 overtimes for Chicago to even the series versus Anaheim. An exciting game. I mean, Crawford was peppered and peppered and peppered. 60 saves in a 3 overtime game.
There was a headbutt goal in that game that was disallowed.
That's an exciting series. So I'm glad I'm not answering this question, but in your opinion, what's the better watch? The NBA Final Four or the NHL Final Four?
I want to know if I can maybe alter your question a little bit and if I can give you the best 4 to watch, because you just laid it out. This is such a difficult question because there's so much good that's going on right now. But after the Houston Rockets beat the Clippers and are now playing Golden State, I've loved Golden State all year long. I've loved watching them. I think they play a terrific brand of basketball. I think that Houston Golden State series is incredible to watch. And on the flip side with the NHL, you've got the Ducks and you've got the Blackhawks, and that series is just going to be nasty. It's going to be a bloodbath. If you watch closely last night, that game, there was a point where Corey Perry grabbed Marian Hossa's stick, ripped it right out of his hands. And Marian Hossa turned to him and said, well, can you give that back to me? Because there was a whistle. And Corey Perry just sat there and held it. So Marian Hossa tried yanking it back from him. He just held on to a stick. So Marian Hossa just turned around, went and started talking to, a referee or one of his players, turned back around, grabbed for a stick. Corey Perry didn't let it go. Marian Hossa was like, just give me my stick. He sat there, threw it down on the ground, turned away, and walked away. This is an actual blood feud here. These teams don't like each other. So I think the best 4, the 2 best series going on right now is the Anaheim Ducks, Chicago Blackhawks in the NHL. You got to watch it. The most entertaining and probably the best basketball you'll see all year long is that Golden State Houston series. So it's really hard. If you got pitcher and pitcher, or if you can set up 2 flat screen TVs next to each other and you can watch both at the same time, I mean, you're just sitting there having orgasms all over yourself. It's incredible.
Haha, that's funny when you said that. Someone tweeted us a picture. I said, hey, someone from Canada tweeted us, and I said, oh, how's Canada reaction? And there's a classic scene from South Park where the dad was on the computer and he's just laying there, let's just say, in his own self.
Yeah.
And so I favorited it. I didn't tweet it out to everybody. So if you're at Detroit Podcast, I'll leave it up there for a minute, but go check out that picture on the favorite side of our Twitter page. It's a perfect example of what the Toronto Maple Leafs must be feeling. Good answer, but I want to then just then definitely.
I'm an NHL guy too. I'm an NHL guy too. Yeah. So take that into consideration. And when I say that, as far as the NBA goes, that's the best basketball you're going to see. That should count for something too. So I mean, if you're an NBA guy, you need to be watching this series.
Okay. No, I with all due respect, I definitely agree. But let me just put it to you then this way. Okay, there's 2 games on tomorrow night, Friday. For example, let's say they're both on at 8 o'clock and you can only tune in and pay attention to one. Your assignment is to, check in on one, report back. Which one are you more excited to check out? You'd have to go with the NBA because the Rockets and the Clippers.
Yeah, but I'm a hockey guy, though.
The Rockets and the Golden State are going to go 7. They're going to go full. I do think Chicago-Anaheim is a great series, but I think a little bit more excitement. I do think that it's basketball.
I think you might be right, but there's this nastiness factor. Yeah. There's this nastiness factor with the NHL. And that's the one thing that kind of draws me to it because these 2 teams, they don't like each other at all. It's nasty. You're waiting for that beat down. It's almost like when you watch car racing, right? What do you watch car racing for? You don't want to sit there. Yeah, you don't want to sit there and watch them turn left for 2.5 hours. You want to watch somebody smack a wall. And with this series, that's what you're watching. You're waiting for that one guy to smack a wall and for that wall to smack back. But you're right. I would probably, oh man, so So difficult. You know what? I'll tell you the NBA, but I'm going to peek in on the NHL. How about that?
Okay.
Is that fair?
That's fair.
That's the best you're going to get from me.
Now, we've had a chance to digest a little bit. Lots of new NHL coaches at new positions. So we'll end Jock Jams with this.
Mm-hmm.
Which NHL coach that's now at a new team is going to have the most success? Now, Blashill likely included. Who's going to have the most success with their new organization?
I'm going to look at this from the point of view of where you're at to what your expectations are. And my expectations, if I'm a fan of a team, is always to win the Holy Grail, the Stanley Cup, right? In this case. So I want a championship. So looking at where I'm at and where I want to be, I'm going to have to say Edmonton. And I say Edmonton based on this. Edmonton has probably some of the most young talent that you'll see. They've got a ton of draft picks, a ton of high draft picks on this. There's no reason that Edmonton should be this bad. I think you have one of the best coaches in the league right now with Todd McClellan going there, okay? Another pupil of Mike Babcock. The guy sat there and took San Jose to 6 consecutive playoff series. This year was the first year that they didn't make it, and he decided to leave. You have a head coach who has prestige and has a great hockey mind. You have a team who is playoff crazed, and they just want to make it there. They just want to taste it. They haven't made it in quite some time. When we were talking with the Rieger, he said that the last time that he thinks they made it was when they beat the Wings a few years ago. So based on that, and based on all that young talent they have there, the Edmonton Oilers will probably have the most success, and that is due to the fact that they're always on the outside of the playoffs looking in. I think they get into the playoffs, and I think maybe they make some noise. Whereas the Wings are always in the playoffs. We have a whole generation, maybe 2 generations of people who have never seen the Wings not make the playoffs, which is insane because I remember when Chris Osgood was giving up goals from center ice, and I remember when they were really bad. I remember when the Wings were really, really bad. That's how old I am. Good job, Jock. That was Jock Jams. Jock always delivers, always has strong takes, sometimes is adverse to putting his foot down, but we will try to press him. Those were really hard, man. I mean, incredible series on both ends here. But that's what we're debating. Which one? You're like, dude. I would peek in on both. I would. I can't help it, man. You seem like the kind of guy I'm a sports junkie, bro. You seem like the kind of guy that would wear a helmet when he's riding his bike. Yeah, well, I did do that. I just wanted to ask you one question with that. Mm-hmm. Did you buy that helmet, or did you kind of get that gifted to you, or what's up with that? I bought that. Why are you doing that? Okay, so the wife is really into bike riding, right? She really likes bike riding, and I don't mind doing it because it's exercise and it's sometimes fun. Every now and then, we'll sit there and we'll go out to like a winery, and they do these like wine-in rides. Where you sit, my God! Yes, it's incredible. You sit there and you get to pick if you want to go 8, 10. They have like 25-mile loops that you can do. And then after you're done, you get to go get drunk, and they feed you. So I'm there for food and for booze. Anyways, we showed up to one of these last year, and we didn't have any helmets. And we had to sit there, and I had to convince the guy to let us do this because we drove all this way. There's no way I'm driving back home without not riding and drinking, right? I need to. So I told her, I was like, look, we got to get helmets if we're going to do this again because we got the invitation to go back to the same one we went to last year. So I said, we got to get helmets. Let's get helmets. And the other day we went on like a 13.5-mile bike ride, and we were sitting there, and I live in Hamtramck, and we rode our bikes out to Ferndale. So you never really know what the cement's like in Detroit, and I wasn't taking a chance of hitting the bump and not being able to come in and do this podcast with you. So I was looking out for you, man. I was looking out for you because if I hit a giant pothole in the middle of the earth and I land on my giant dome and I have a brain injury, then what? Then what? Then I come in and I'm more special than I already am. Then the numbers probably would triple. It probably would. It'd just be me drooling on the mic. Good stuff, sir. No, it was good. I thought it was an opportunity to laugh at you a little bit. You look always. Oh, the funny thing about you is when you take a picture, you're always looking like it's like a mugshot. You're always looking like mean mugging. I hate taking pictures. Why are you mean mugging, man? I hate taking pictures, dude. I take the worst pictures ever, and my eyes are always extra squinty. So like seriously, dude, I look extra Asian. It's brutal. I get made fun of by everybody for it. It's just the way it is. And I hate taking pictures, man. I hate smiling. Like I like laughing, but I don't like smiling in pictures because my eyes disappear. Right. And then everybody laughs about my eyes because they're not there. So I find it better just to go with stone face. Gotcha. This is a good podcast, man. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, I love when we get to do this and some great news happens. We get to break it down, get our first reaction right at the very beginning of the news cycle. So it's very interesting. I'm looking forward to see now
how the hell the Maple Leafs are going to shake out their roster. How is Mike Babcock going to fix the Maple Leafs? I think the press conference is going to be today at 11 a.m., so tune into that after you download this great podcast. For the Jock, Adam Strozinski, I am the Doc, John Macaroon. This has been episode 93 of our podcast. Thank you for supporting us. Check out our website. Free way to support us, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. See everybody next week.
Go Wings.
Favorite non-pornographic magazine to masturbate to?
Good Housekeeping.
If you were a chick, who's the one guy you would sleep with?
John Stamos.
What? Did we just become best friends?
Yup.
You want to go do karate in the garage?
Yup.
I hear voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me. They talk to me.